I'm looking at the team members. There we go. You should see a poll right in front of you. If you take a few seconds to go ahead and fill that out, that would be fabulous.
Do we have like one question at a time to see the answers, or it'll just?
We have one question at a time for that poll. So we'll take 30 seconds to go ahead and fill that out. I believe there are 5 questions attached to that. And then once all those answers come in for the poll, I do believe we're able to share those results live. So this gives us a sense of who's in the room, what level folks are at just in terms of where they are with their businesses. So much of this conversation is remembering that we aren't in this conversation alone. We aren't in the struggle and in this challenge alone, that we have each other. And many of us have shared experiences that will come to light during this conversation. So maybe take 30 more seconds to wrap up those polls. And then Monika, did we clarify who can share that poll right after?
Sorry, yes, we'll share that immediately.
Wonderful. Great, so as we're wrapping that poll up very quickly, I would love to pass it along to our next 2 panelists, Sandy and Ken from Business as It Could Be, to go ahead and give their introduction. They have a short presentation, and then we'll jump into conversations and questions.
All right. Thank you, Naima. I'm Sandy Sohcot. Very pleased to be here. I currently am the director of a program called The World as It Could Be. It's a human rights education program that brings awareness to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that has helped inspire our name, Business as It Could Be. I'm also a management consultant, have been so in the small business community for a number of years, and am very pleased to have this opportunity. Ken Stram and I began talking about what we're presenting to you today in early April. We were concerned about what was happening with the shelter-in-place requirements on small businesses and seeing what a difficult situation this would be in. And we felt that we wanted to do what we could to support the small business community in times of great challenge. A lot of times it's not easy to think about where to go from here when you are struck by the severity of the impact of having to close your business for a period of time or reduce the volume of what you're accustomed to. And so we set about, we began a collaboration with people that some of you may be familiar with, Mark Quinn, who has been part of the Small Business Administration for many years, Mark Herbert, who is Vice President of the Small Business Majority, are pleased to say Dr. Hudson, Heidi Pickman of Cameo, and then of course Ken and I. We began meeting to understand what was already going on to support small business and what still needed to be available. And what we felt was important was to have some framework for thinking strategically, even while in the midst of crisis. And so what we're presenting to you today, we developed initially 8 questions that we felt would help business owners think from how do you get out from where you are right this moment to be able to reopen, to how to think somewhat more strategically, how to reopen in a way that would provide long-term success in a sustainable manner, and even to make some changes that might have been necessary before the COVID. And so I'm looking forward. We actually had the opportunity to present this information to a group of business advisors for Cameo a few weeks ago, and we were very pleased to get such a great response that these things were helpful, and they even suggested 3 more, which make up our total complement of 11 that we'll soon go over with you. And I'll now turn this over to my esteemed colleague, Ken.
Thanks, Sandy. Yeah, my name's Ken Stram, and I have a business. It's called Two Bridge Communications. Prior to starting my business, I help companies with communication strategy, public relations, social media. Prior to starting my business, I spent many years sort of on the front lines helping small business people, first at the Small Business Administration in Washington. And then I moved out here and I had the good fortune to start an economic development program for the LGBT community. And we've helped people with small business, with financial literacy, with finding jobs. So yeah, so many, many years of helping small businesses. And then I finally took the leap and started my own. So one of the wonderful things about my job is that I get to talk to small business owners all the time. And I just wanted to share stories. And I see that 100% of the people who responded to the poll are planning to do things differently. And that's wonderful, because I think that's what this COVID crisis does give us an opportunity to do, is really think through our supply chains and our human resources policies and our products and services and our community. So just 3 quick stories. So yeah, so I work with a group called SF Made, and they support local manufacturers. So there's a manufacturer in San Francisco. They made a better 3D printer. The printers are manufactured in San Jose, but they just happen to have 50 of these printers in their San Francisco facility when shelter in place happened. And they just decided that they were going to do something. And so they started out with face masks, and that didn't really work for their printer. And they sort of experimented with a couple of things, but then they realized that there was a challenge with the testing, primarily because there's a shortage of swabs. The reason there's a shortage of swabs is that there are only 2 places in the world that manufacture these swabs, and they're mold injected. And so this company basically got involved with an open source project to create new swabs, and they did. And now they're manufacturing hundreds of thousands of swabs and working with larger 3D printing manufacturers. So they acted so fast, within weeks, they were producing swabs for the crisis. And then some other just more sort of simple examples. There's a company in San Jose called Knox Cookies. And their whole business was people coming in during their work breaks, or buying cookies to take home in the evening. And basically, when the shelter in place happened, their whole business basically was ended. But then really quickly, they were paying attention to what was happening. And it turns out employers were starting to purchase cookie gift boxes to send to their employees who were working from home, because they wanted to express their gratitude. And also, a lot of people, as they were sort of stuck at home watching Netflix, they started ordering cookies. So the business basically pivoted its whole workforce. They typically would get ready for the daytime by working in the evening. Now they switched their shifts. So in the daytime, they're preparing for the evening rush. And then a third story, which is, again, just sort of a simple story, but it was due to the entrepreneurs thinking fast, acting quickly, and being really in touch with the marketplace. And this is a company called Alpha Graphics. They're a printer in San Francisco's financial district. So another case of they immediately lost all their business, but they realized right away that corporate clients were going to need a different kind of printing. They were going to need signs for their floors for socially distancing, and restaurants perhaps would need menus that could be easily washed. So they switched their production. Now they're manufacturing these signs and these menus, and they feel really confident that their business, like they're back to their original, they're back to 100%. They've been able to maintain their employees, and they feel really confident about the future, that they were able to be this nimble, and the need for these products isn't going to go away fast, but then they'll get back to their corporate clients, people get back to work. So those are just so 3 stories, and we'll be sharing more stories as we go through the process. And I think we're ready to go through our questions. And Sandy, you're on mute.
What Ken and I are going to share with you are the questions that we've developed. And I believe that all of you who are participating are going to receive the full document that outlines everything that we're talking about, from the context for businesses it could be, to the questions, so that you have them as a tool for you to take with you. Now, the idea of these questions is, when you're trying to make decisions, what seems to be most helpful is what's the question that you need to answer. By asking that right question, it might be able to shift your thinking to something that you might not have felt you would consider before. And the way these questions are designed, they start with the immediate situation that you're in, from how to get out from the immediate crisis, to thinking through what opportunities are available as you move forward. So I'll start with the first, and that is, what resources and funds do you need to stay in business for the next 6 months as you prepare to fully reopen? So this is a short term, what do I need to make sure I have available to me so that I can withstand the restrictions of the shelter in place? And to think about what are possible sources for these funds and these resources. And I don't know if you want to speak to it, Ken, but we know that there are still some funds available from the SBA and perhaps from San Francisco's small business re-entry. And I don't know if you want to elaborate on that.
Yeah, so there are a lot of nonprofit organizations. I think Working Solutions, which is a local micro lender, I think they have one of the best well-maintained lists of resources that are available, and specifically funding. And you might think of like the PPP loans or San Francisco loans, but corporate foundations like Facebook are also providing funds. So I know that SF Made also has a list, Working Solutions has a list, and the city has a good list too if you go to the office of the San Francisco Office of Economic and Workforce Development and ask your friends if you don't know where to find these resources. I would say just trust that there is a program out there that you can apply for, and then find it.
The second question is to think through what do your customers need from you to continue to patronize your business, to think about from your customer's vantage point, what is it that they're going to be looking for as they want to continue to patronize you that is going to help them feel safe and able to actively take part in your business.
Yeah, and Sandy, is it okay? We're just going to do this back and forth thing.
Yeah.
So I was registering for a Frameline movie, that's the LGBTQ Film Festival last night, and I noticed that one of their films is taking place at West Wind Solano Drive-In. I didn't even know we had a drive-in in the Bay Area, but I went to their page and their instructions make you feel so confident, or FAQ, about how they are cleaning during the crisis, what services are going to be available. So again, just simple things such as really clear instructions for your customers will give them the confidence that they need to continue to patronize your business.
The third is, what policies and physical changes do you need to put into place to reopen safely? So, and as you think through what you feel your customers want, what you yourself want to do to reposition your business, to actually document these and think about what resources are you going to need to make this happen? Do you need some different suppliers? Are you going to need some additional funds to do this? I had worked with who's actually the person who cuts my hair, but has been in a hair salon business for, I think, about 30 years. And we went through these questions, and it was interesting for her to think about what she had to do, like even disposable covers to have for her clients and what that was going to take, where she was going to get them to allow her to safely reopen. The fourth is, are there things about your business you wanted to change even before the COVID crisis? And this is actually part of what even spurred our thinking with business as it could be. We know that there have been challenges in the small business community just because of the changes in doing business. People don't shop the way they used to on neighborhood streets. There has been quite a difference how businesses have operated even before COVID. But now, are there things that you want to make sure you're doing that you felt were important to do and can have the opportunity to put these in place? And so that perhaps the crisis can even have a silver lining to it in some respects. The fifth question is, are there new business models or products or innovations that you can design to pursue the opportunities that you've identified? Again, this is a chance to think about, well, how could I do this differently? If I want, now for instance, in speaking with my hair person, as she talked about it, she said she had working in hair replacement techniques, but this was giving her an opportunity to actually expand that side of her business, and that she could create more online consultation services than she had ever done before. And it's important to her to learn because she realized she really hated technology, but this was the time that really was important to do this.
Yeah, and just another simple example. There's a company in San Francisco, probably many of you know about it, Ritual Coffee, and they have a good space for curbside pickup in a couple different neighborhoods. But they noticed that other businesses in the community didn't. So they started a little general store, and they offered basically products that people need now, you know, toilet paper when they could get it, and they were able to support their fellow business people. So that's just such a simple innovation, but it built a stronger community, and you can be sure that those community connections, those stronger community connections are gonna last beyond the crisis. The next question. Who else is involved in supporting your business, and who's going to support you as you reopen and retool for a stronger future? You know, I think, you know, you just get so focused running a business. Being an entrepreneur is really hard work, and you have blinders on, and sometimes you forget that you need a network of support. So I think this is a good time to, and we'll talk about support networks throughout this workshop, but I think it's a really good time to think through your support network, reach out to people that you may not have connected with for a while, and sort of, really think through, maybe you have a board of directors or a board of advisors that you haven't like revisited for a while. So a lot of things that you can do to build a community around your business so that you have a stronger footing for the future. Okay, question number 7. And so, and this is also, I just want to remind people that, the reason I wanted to work with Sandy on this is because her organization, The World as It Could Be, is based in human rights. And, I think going forward, we're all going to have to, we're currently working through a deep and difficult crisis with COVID, but there's another crisis going on, and that is the crisis of the environment. And so, I, for example, when I order food and it comes in plastic for delivery and it's all plastic containers, I don't order from that restaurant again. I really want to receive food that is in, cardboard or, sustainable packaging. So, what can your business do to become more environmentally sustainable? And maybe that's something to do with your suppliers, maybe it's your, there are a lot of things to consider. But I think as we're resetting our business for the future, this is a good time to think through environmental sustainability. How can your business demonstrate inclusivity, and are there ways that you can support Black-owned businesses? So again, it's a really good time to think through, your HR policies, your suppliers, and where you even shop yourself. And the businesses, perhaps you support other businesses through having their business cards on your counter when people come into your retail outlet. So it's a good time to think through, how are you supporting Black-owned businesses right now? What are possible new business opportunities for you that could arise from this situation? So I think that goes back to the stories I was talking about initially, just all these things that you do in necessity that you realize could become long-term improvements for your business, and also reaching out to your network and asking people who know you and know your business how you can change going forward.
I have just a thought. I've been reading about Tap Plastics based in Hayward, and I think they were a relatively small business, and they are now revamping with all kinds of opportunities that have come out of this to be, I'm sure, way beyond what they might have imagined before. Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, no. The next question. There we go. And then what do you need to know more about to implement your ideas, such as regulations that relate to your business, your ideas? And I think here we are at San Francisco Small Business Week. And San Francisco Small Business Week is just, an example of all the nonprofit organizations that are there support you, all the corporate partners that support Small Business Week who really are concerned about the health of the small business community. So at a minimum, go visit the San Francisco Small Business Week website, look at the resources page, but also as you're reopening, I know for restaurants in particular, there are a lot of things that you'll need to be very careful about. And I'm certain that, for example, the Restaurant Association will have regulations that you can follow, or perhaps there is a restaurant in your network that is a little bit ahead of you. So looking to them, I would say don't hesitate to call other small business owners about how, best practices as you get back in business. Yeah, and question number 11, I think this is a good time just to turn it back over to Naima, because this is exactly what she does.
And I just have one quick point before we do that, and that is where it says, do you know who to get help from and who are your circles of support? With regard to these questions, they may seem even daunting, like, what do I do now? You've given this to me, what am I supposed to do? I think that it probably would be optimal to be able to work through these questions, either with a trusted advisor, with a coach, and certainly if there are advisors that you are connected with through your circles of support, that you're not feeling like you are just doing this alone, that you can have someone to bounce these questions off of, so that you're not feeling isolated in it, and to not feel overwhelmed by them, and to also consider just taking them one by one, and not worrying about whether you feel like, oh, I don't know if I can answer that, but to actually just allow yourself the ease of thinking through what you're asking of yourself, and to enjoy getting input from others to help you brainstorm about this.
Thank you, Ken and Sandy. And to Ken's point, yes, this is exactly what Alliance does, is that we see ourselves in this journey with business owners and entrepreneurs. And so we sit down, we think through and reflect on these questions and think through the resources and really the next steps to address the challenges that you are facing as a business owner and entrepreneur. And I'm super thankful that Rose from Potluck Consulting has joined us today. Rose knows that these questions are a guideline. Rose is actually engaged in most of these questions as an exercise. And so I'm thankful that Rose has agreed to model how she's thought about these questions for her own business in recent time. And so we've elected to select a couple of the questions from the deck of 11 to just walk through in terms of how Rose thought about it. And we'll sort of play back and forth with that experience. So Rose, let's jump into question number 2, because I know that that's one that you've reflected on. So what do your customers need from you to continue to patronize your business? How did you think about this question?
Yeah, and I think before I answer that question, I'd like to introduce myself so that I can share the context of like where I'm coming from and where my business is at, so that if you're in a similar position, hopefully this will be helpful to you. And my goal is to kind of be a guinea pig so that we can have an honest discussion about, like, honestly, how has business been affected? So first, to introduce myself, my name is Rose Souders, and I'm the owner of a digital marketing company called Potluck Consulting. And we specialize in analytics and conversion strategies through social media, email marketing, paid advertising, and SEO. And to provide some context, so my business has been around for a little over 7 years. I've actually utilized the San Francisco Small Business Week for years, since the very beginning, which is actually how I met Ken, my co-presenter here. And there's a couple other familiar faces I can see on this list. To provide some more context, so I have an office space that has overhead. I have 2 full-time employees with payroll and health insurance. And so I'm going to be answering these questions with kind of that in mind, so you can kind of try to relate. So the first question is, what do your customers need from you to continue to patronize your business? And so to touch on what Naima said, I approach these questions as kind of a check-in for myself and a check-in for business. So as the kind of shelter in place started happening and news about the pandemic started happening, I found it extremely difficult to try to wrap my head around, okay, so what do our contracts look like in the following months? How will we do our sales process to get in new clients? We had plans for hiring a new employee. What does that mean? Are we not going to be able to do that? The, kind of restructuring that I promised my employees, are we going to be able to do that? And so what do my customers need from me? And so through conversations with my current customers and conversations with potential customers that I had talked to even before the pandemic and shelter in place happened, it was super, super clear to me that flexibility was the main thing for me and my customers. What they needed was flexibility. And what that means is they still saw marketing as important, for them and their business. So they didn't want to stop working with us or stop talking to us, but it wasn't business as usual. So they couldn't approach it in the same way. Because there were too many unknowns, we couldn't plan for incoming revenue in the upcoming months. So commitment to like a long-term contract was really scary, which I totally understood. And so the flexibility that they were asking for were shorter term contracts. That's one thing I noticed. A lot of times in service-based companies like mine that work on kind of a monthly retainer, contracts are usually 6 months, 12 months, something like that. So what we started doing is offering 3-month contracts, or even just working with our clients to figure out what was helpful to them. What did they feel good about? The other thing in terms of flexibility was payment plans. And so while a lot of people were waiting on SBA loans or just waiting to see how fast things would reopen, having that flexibility with the customer was really helpful, and also showed the customers that we understood where they were coming from. We wanted to support them, and we're also grateful for their business and wanting to stay with us. And then the last thing that I noticed, which was actually a surprise to me that I hadn't thought about, was creative payment plans. So what I mean by that is like profit sharing ideas. So I even had a client who had been wanting to work with us for, I think, over a few months, and we had already started a conversation before all this. And they approached me with this kind of profit sharing plan, and we actually had a lot of discussions about it, and were able to create a contract that was mutually beneficial for the both of us, where we could be really invested in the marketing for their business, and then we would, as form and payment, share part of the profits. So again, all of these things do make kind of the admin process of business more complicated, but the reality is flexibility was really what everybody needed. And so those are some of the ways that we've been able to adapt in that sense, to give our customers what they need.
Rose, thank you so much for sharing, because what I'm hearing is that you saw a lot of opportunity to meet folks where they are, and you were able to really pivot to do so. So that leads me to the next question, which was item number 4 on the slides. Are there things about your business that you wanted to change even before COVID? And in that, are there opportunities that you were able to take advantage of probably sooner than later because you were prompted to do so?
Yeah, and here's the part where, as like the business guinea pig here, it gets a little vulnerable. So like many people, we lost in the first 3 weeks of the shelter in place, almost half of our incoming revenue from our clients. So many of our colleagues that we were talking to, a lot of our clients had to shut down immediately with the shelter in place, and were no longer bringing revenue themselves in, which meant that it trickles down, obviously, to the contractors and vendors that they work with. Even if we've been working with them for years and we have a really good relationship, that's the nature of, if business shuts down and there's no revenue, that's what's going to need to happen so that you can keep your employees on payroll, take care of your operations. And so, you asked, are there things that I would want to change even without COVID? So yes, and for me, I'm always suffering from the catch-22. I have all of these things I want to do, and I need to spend time to do it, but I don't have any time to do it because I'm running my business or I'm doing things for my clients. So for months, I talked about wanting to improve our monthly reporting system. So we do a lot of really deep dive analytics reporting, and I've always wanted to make it more efficient, also make our workflows more efficient internally so our employees can spend more time on the creative side of things. But I can never find the time to do it, even though I knew it would save me time. And so one of the opportunities I found from the shelter in place and this kind of everything that's happening is one of the silver linings. While it's a little depressing that you lose so much business, one of the silver linings is that you actually gain a lot of time to invest back into your business. And so the way we've approached it is while we've lost clients, we treat ourselves like a client now. And so that was definitely one of the silver linings, is like we have like an ongoing list of things that we've been wanting to improve, so much so where the list really isn't even useful anymore because it's just too long and you don't know how to approach it. But we've finally been able to have time to kind of just tick away at some of the priorities. So I would definitely say that's one of the silver linings for sure.
I really appreciate you sharing that. I feel like that is a trend that we've heard from a lot of businesses at Alliance, and certainly something that we've experienced ourselves. I think I shared with our panelists, I stepped into this role in the middle of COVID. So I very much appreciate what it means to need to do that internal work and check in while also trying to meet the immediate demands as they're showing up. And so I know that in my role, I'm thinking a lot about how do I keep some of this time blocking as we move into recovery, as we shift into what the economy will look like and things inevitably pick back up. And I'm wondering how you're thinking about that too. So what are the possible new business opportunities for you that have arisen or could arise further as we continue to figure out how we're navigating COVID-19? Are you going to keep that same mindset of treating yourselves like clients, or are you going to evolve that into something else?
Yeah, and so that's a tough one, because again, it's this catch-22 where you run out of time, so your business becomes the last priority, right? Like you focus on your clients, and so your own marketing suffers. And so moving forward, we're definitely keeping in mind these systems in place of by being able to spend the time revamping our systems, or even spend the time doubling down our own marketing, that did pay off. We did see progress from that. And I think it's super important to remember as you get busier about those wins that you had when you invested that time in, because it's really easy to get caught up and not pay attention to your own business because it's kind of on the back burner. And if we're talking about, I think you had asked, what are the possible opportunities that I've seen from this kind of situation? And I actually noticed a pretty strange one that I hadn't thought about until maybe a few weeks ago. So for me, we are a service-based business. Our sales process can usually take a couple months to kind of first come in contact with the client, build a rapport, build a relationship, and then kind of talk through the different needs. So I've always paid close attention to what do the companies have in common that choose to work with us and hire us. And I happen to know normally they're small companies with smaller internal marketing teams, maybe 1 to 3 people. They're looking to expand their marketing, but not necessarily to hire a larger team. They want kind of an outside source, and they have a small staff. So with the pandemic, what I've noticed, and this is where it feels kind of icky to talk about, but I think it's a reality that none of us caused, and we just need to kind of wrap our heads around it and adapt. So one thing I've noticed is that many companies, unfortunately, are actually downsizing their staff right now. And that could be for a variety of reasons, right? Their company's restructured, maybe there's not as much revenue coming in, they've had to do layoffs, or people are working remotely and they're, again, restructuring. The weird thing is, I had a realization that it may actually take a while for companies to build their staff back up. So even when things reopen, people may not rehire right away, or even employees may not even want to come back to that original job, right? So there's a lot of change in staffing right now. And while I don't think laying off employees is something to celebrate, it does create an opportunity for service-based businesses or different businesses that provide a service to a company to kind of step in and provide that service that maybe former staff were providing. And so for a company like ours, I realized there's actually going to be a lot of need for services like ours because of all these companies kind of downsizing. But then when things reopen, people are going to need to be remarketing their business. And so I think, my business is a marketing agency, which is not everybody's here, but I really recommend take a step back and think about how does the pandemic and the shelter in place and the staffing changes, how does that affect your sales process and your target market? And honestly, I don't know if a lot of people are thinking about that right now. So I think if you can maybe spend like 20 minutes brainstorming that and get ahead of your competitors, I think you'll be in pretty good shape. So it's like just kind of taking stock of the reality and figuring out how that works with your sales process and your target market, I think will be really beneficial.
Thank you so much. And thank you for also naming trade-offs that happen, right? There are good and bad things that are coming from the environment that we're experiencing right now. And so I kind of want to take it back for this last question to really come back to knowing who's in your corner, knowing who's in your community, and who you can sort of tap in with and check in with to move forward. And so I want to check in with you around, you know, who do you get help from? Who's in your corner? Who do you go to as like your personal advisory board, more or less, to help you think through, how do I see the opportunities I might be missing? What resources might I not be connected to? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, I think it's different from like now from when I first started my business, but like now who I turn to is I've actually, you know, since kind of the shelter in place started happening, I have like a group chat on like a text with like probably 6 other like super amazing women in business, and that we're each other's like hype team. And so like every time something good happens, we'll be like, oh, look at this. And like, we're like, wow, you know, and with some chats, you can send a little like celebration fireworks or something. And so like, that's really important to me because, you know, you can be super down one week and super up another week. And you can, you know, it's not like you need to be, oh, I'm having a really bad week, but you can, you know, even if someone's noticing you're extra silent or something, they'll say, hey, I saw you're speaking on Small Business Week. Woo, go you know? And so I think it's really important to have some kind of little regular chat. And I was kind of chatting with friends every few days, just kind of even a text. That's really helpful. And I think it's also important to mention that a lot of these people that I kind of regular keep in touch with are people that I've met through networking at Small Business Week, like at industry groups. So I'm part of like a marketing industry group called Professional Marketing Group North Bay. And so like really finding like, and I recommend a couple different, like finding your industry group, finding, you know, like I'm really drawn to like women in business, finding that and like kind of like cherry picking the people that you really jive with. And you can usually tell, like you meet eyes across the room when we can be in the same room and you're like, yeah, I like you. Let's talk a little more. And then another thing I'll say is something that Ken actually gave me an idea for years ago. And I don't know if you remember this, Ken, but a business buddy, the idea of a business buddy has really, really changed the way I approach business. Because there's this kind of like dark thing that happens in entrepreneurship where we like keep everything bad to ourselves and then we only like portray everything good that we've done and our wins. And that's not real and that's not helpful. And so I actually have a friend that I reached out to and asked to be a business buddy with. And it's kind of funny because it's almost like you're asking someone out on a date, because you're kind of nervous and you're approaching them because you respect them and you want to brainstorm business with them. And you're like, will you be my business buddy? And you'd be surprised. Usually they'll say, you know, yeah, what does that mean? And the beauty of it is we agreed, you know, we're going to be, you know, confidential with each other. We'll share each other's numbers. We'll share some strategies that we're thinking about. And it's super helpful to actually have that level of vulnerability when it's so expected that we don't talk about numbers. We don't talk about the bad stuff. And so that's super helpful. And then the last thing I think is super important to realize is like with business ownership, no matter where you are, in 7 years where I am, year 1, year 30, there's always learning because things are always changing. And so I think it's really important to name all of the organizations in San Francisco that really provide fantastic services that I've used a lot of. And San Francisco has such a wealth of these organizations. It's amazing. And so just to name a few that I think are super important, the Mayor's Office of Small Business and the Business Portal, that space has everything you need for all of your permits, your guidelines. There's obviously the SBA in San Francisco, which actually shares a building with SCORE, which offers free mentorship, which is really amazing. So if you need kind of a mentorship on finances, you can go in there and talk to them. The other thing is the USF Gellert Family Business Center, who's the host of this workshop. If you're a family business, that's definitely going to be your go-to place. There's also a lot of funding options and ways to access capital, which Ken mentioned a few: Alliance for Community Development, Working Solutions, Opportunity Fund. I mean, the list goes on. You can literally Google to your heart's desire, and there's a million fantastic organizations. So those are the three: get your chat, get your group chat, get your business buddy, and the organizations.
Thank you, Rose. I will also say, if you're someone who is overwhelmed by Google, feel free to schedule time with us at Alliance. We're happy to be your Google and work you through that. But I also want to talk about, Rose, is what you mentioned very briefly, that who your support circles are now looks very different from what they were when you first started. And given that we have folks on today's call at varying stages of their business, can you share a little bit more about who you were connected to when you were first getting started? Who was that group for you?
Yeah, totally. For me, when I first started, I mean, when you're approaching business, you have friends, but you don't necessarily have business friends yet. And it's funny how when you're in business long enough, it kind of flops and all your friends are your business friends. And when I first started, the first place I went to was Chamber of Commerce networking events. I think networking events was where I was drawn, because there was a variety of different people there. So Chamber of Commerce networking events. San Francisco Small Business Week was a huge one for me, and I still attend every single year. But that's where I met some of my close colleagues now, including Ken. The other place to go is workshops. So workshops are kind of smaller, and you'll probably meet 20 people, but you're going to get to know each other in more of a learning process. So those are kind of the areas that I would recommend to start, and then kind of just feel out the room and kind of get to know people. And then as you go on, what you'll learn is like, you'll start to like hone in on the people that you really want to be connecting with in terms of like your personalities click or your business strategies click. But yeah, in the beginning, definitely don't be afraid, or try not to be afraid, to go to networking groups. And I think the best thing to remember is like, most people are in the room are nervous to meet new people. And so, you can always start just by saying hi and introducing yourself. And if somebody doesn't respond well, there's probably like 50 other people in the room you can introduce yourself to. But I would definitely start with networking.
Thank you, much appreciated. And thank you again for joining us today in conversation and being so willing to be transparent and open and vulnerable with me in conversation. Again, I think that this set of questions is really stellar. I think it's a fantastic exercise for every business owner, organizational leader, entrepreneur to walk through as you're reflecting and thinking through, what does evolution look like for me? What does this work look like for me? I'm sure folks have a ton of questions, and I'm looking at time. So I want to pause for a second and turn it over to Dr. Hudson to see if we'd like to open up the comment box for questions, or if we want to share sort of our gratitude for today for what Ken, Sandy, and Rose have shared as we're closing out, as I see we have about 15 minutes left.
People can go ahead and put information, questions in the chat. I do want to move us forward, but please put information in the chat. I did notice that people were also putting in suggestions and connections, and we want to keep that going because we are going to be sending follow-up material after today's session. So I'm understanding that Sandy will be leading out with a couple of questions.
Well, I actually have just a recommendation, and that is for everyone having listened. Particularly, I want to thank you, Rose, for so eloquently describing your own experience. I feel like for all of you having heard what we presented, the questions that we've noted, I would like to suggest that you take a moment, and if you have some paper handy or just in your phone, jot down 1 to 2 or 3 actions that you would like to take to follow up on what you've heard today, to help you really go to the next step with your business. From what you've heard and and are thinking about what actions do you want to take right away to just start implementing some ideas that have come to you. That's my main suggestion. And Monika, how will people receive the write-up of Business as It Could Be? Will it be in some type of email form, or how will that information be dispersed?
We've asked everyone to please put their name, their organization, and email in so that we can go ahead and send them the follow-up slides from today. Also, we can send a list of resources that we have on our website and that we are updating. So if, again, people will use the chat function, put in their name, their organization, and email, we would like to share all of that with everyone so that we're using this as a community building platform.
Thank you so much. And so as folks are jotting down their action steps, we have quite a few people on today, so it may be a little bit difficult to do a 1-2 word whip around, but I'd love for Ken, Sandy, Rose, and Dr. Hudson to share just some final thoughts as we close out today, your hopes for folks on this call, anything that you've learned from each other that you're walking away with.
I'd like to call on Mark Quinn, if he doesn't mind, just to he's been with us from the beginning on this questionnaire. So Mark, are you, Mark? Maybe not. If I see him look up, I think he should say a couple words. Yeah, so I just think my thing is, I'm always inspired by Sandy, and she always, her philosophy is that good questions will lead you to good solutions, if I can sort of couch that in a way that, so I think, and I think the world of small business resources, like small business owners are used to sort of completing business plans. And there's a good chance you haven't updated your business plan for a long time, or your strategic plan. And so this is a really nice opportunity to work through the questions. And as you're working through, really think through those other resources you need, or, what are your competitors doing? So I'm just, sort of thrilled to have a very relevant and timely resource for the small business community.
And I think my hope, because from how we started this effort with Business as It Could Be, is that we want this to be what our contribution is to people who are really challenged almost moment by moment. I don't know how many of you find every day presents some other challenge that I had not been anticipating. And I feel like what we need is some type of steadiness that we can look to help us focus, even in the midst of ever-changing things. Things are changing really day by day, but rather than feel almost paralyzed by it or worried about it, that we're hoping this is just one extra way to give a source of, I can think this through, that I can do something in a strategic way for myself, for my business, and for my community. So we're hoping that this is that type of help, and that these will be used to really help each person feel like they can succeed in the best way possible, not just out of crisis, but over the long term in a positive sense.
Yeah, I'll say something too. I think my final thoughts are to realize that no matter how long you've been in business, it's hard right now. And, you are not alone if you've lost business. You're not alone if you're confused on how to reopen. And so just realizing that you can be kind to yourself, and, it's not your fault. You didn't fail if you're, losing business right now, and that, be kind to yourself, use these questions as a tool to check in, and then don't be afraid to reach out to people with questions, or even a sounding board. If you need a business buddy, go ask someone that you respect their business, or, you can put questions in the chat and we'll answer them here. So just don't be afraid to be vulnerable, I guess. And, just, you're not alone.
Naima, did you have any last words that you wanted to offer?
Yeah, I think I've been struck a lot from Rose's story and feeling very related to so much of what was shared. I think I want to say that I recognize that reflection and time for reflection can often feel like a privilege or a luxury, like this thing that you like are very lucky to find time to do, but it is so necessary for evolution and growth. I would implore all of you to find time in the next couple of weeks to really carve out that 10, 15, 20 minutes a day to sit and think through, like, where am I? What do I need? Who do I need to be connected to? And how do I find those folks?
Great. So I want to thank everyone who joined us today. I want to start out by thanking Bank of America, who are the sponsors of this particular session. I'd like to thank our panelists, Sandy, Ken, Rose, and Naima, for really walking us through a process, kind of demonstrating how it could be utilized and hopefully effective as folks are doing that reset. I'd like to offer a special shout out to my Gellert Advisory Board members, Ken Stram, Naima McQueen, Regina Davis, and Leonard Y. Garton, who are here on today's panel. And to really turn it over now to a kind of summary survey that we would like to have everyone take. So if folks can go ahead and go into the chat, we have a very quick, probably 3-minute survey. We'd like to ask that everyone complete quickly right now so that we can utilize this information as part of the documentation, not only of the event, but materials that we can share with you from the center. So thank you all very much for your involvement with us today, and please go ahead and fill out that form. If anyone does have closing comments that they want to put in the chat, please go ahead and do so. But right now, we want to collect those comments.
I like that we're all staring at each other's faces right now. And I think it's a great opportunity to match up new business buddies.
I love the business buddy idea. I have one. And it's been wonderful.
You've used it before, right, Naima?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I did too.
A great
with
idea.
a friend who was a barber. And I was doing my consulting business at the time, so it was completely unrelated businesses, but still immensely helpful.
Yeah. That's my business buddy and I have been gone for 10 years or more, and it's either weekly or every other week, and we present monthly reports religiously. We present annual reports, and like we've just really, and also what Monika just said, she's the sexy grammarian. She teaches people how to write, and I have a communications firm, so they're related, but it's a really different business model, and I think having that different perspective helps.
Yeah.
Totally.
I think my business buddy is also a marketing agency, which is really cool. So she provides a lot of perspective around the work because we work together around my capacity with Alliance, but I also do active EDI consulting outside of that and sort of working with financial institutions to strengthen their equity-centered work. And so we ping ideas off of each other and get to share space, which I guess we didn't get to mention today, but is important to also like be comfortable identity-wise, right? So for me, I am a queer Black woman in a business space and often in financial spaces. There are not a ton of folks that look like me, and she is in the same position, right? So getting to understand and bounce that experience back and forth between one another to hold space for that evolution has been really powerful.
Yeah.
And I think I want to thank you, particularly Naima, for really emphasizing, as you did, Rose, the importance of realizing you're not alone. I think that we often, especially when you're running a business and sometimes you are the main person, you kind of feel like, it's all on me. But I think you really made some very good points about the importance of having a buddy or seeking out that help. And I hope I think that did get across, and it's such an important point that we all need to remind ourselves of.
Or even just, I was just going to say, even just having someone else remind you that you're doing a good job.
Yeah.
That's the real thing, because imposter syndrome is real.
When I start saying negative things about myself, Christy will say, "Don't talk about my friend that way." So.
Totally, that's perfect.
Yeah, I just want to thank Jazzmin and Claire and Danielle for your help behind the scenes. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
In addition to handling the panic calls this morning, so I really appreciate it.
Yeah, see, it all worked out. Don't worry.
It did, of course. We knew it would. I knew it would, Monika, but.
So I am going to go ahead and end the meeting for all of us. But again, I can't thank our participants enough, Sandy, Rose, Ken, and Naima. And as I indicated, I'm really honored. Naima is a member of my board, but we also had a couple of other board members checking in as well. So I hope that everybody got a chance to introduce themselves to one another who are board members. And I see board members reaching out to one another through the chat. So definitely be in touch, and know that as soon as I finish teaching this week, I will be sending out a doodle trying to set up a board meeting because I have just been overwhelmed with trying to teach remotely and a number of other things, including negotiations with our university. But we will definitely be in touch soon. So again, thank you all for this opportunity. Clearly, if you've looked at the chat, a lot of positive comments about what came out. I will be pulling down the chat so that we have that information. Okay?
Great. Yeah.
Thank you, Monika.
Have a good
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Oh, what's your dog's name?
This is Oreo.
Hi, Oreo.
He was just chasing the mailman.
See,
Have a great
that's
day.
where that strategic mute comes in handy.
Right.
This one.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.